Welcome to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and this is the YouTube version of our podcast. To get the audio version, you can hop on over to Spotify or anywhere that you consume audio podcasts. We are going to jump into some really cool content, so stay tuned for our next guest. We look forward to connecting with you, and be sure to subscribe. And to start your author adventure, hop on over to o'learypublishing.com, where you can map out the entire process and see what writing a book would look like for you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary, your host, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have David Hayward, this is just one of his books, Flip It Like This, on with me today. And you just heard his amazing bio. We connected through Instagram. I've been following for quite a while. And so I thought, let me just talk to him, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Nice to meet you, and hello, everyone. Yeah.
So we talk a lot around here about writing and publishing, of course, and writing from your experience. That's the most powerful place to write from, and sharing the things that have transformed you. That's really what we're focused on here. I know a lot of our authors have that experience. Not necessarily just around transforming their relationship with God, whatever that may be, but it could be a major tragedy that happened in their life. It could be a spiritual awakening. It could be, there was a gentleman we published a book for who was falsely imprisoned. And then he came out, and his book was called, it's actually behind me here, Escaping the Darkness, Overcoming Adversity. So, to use those experiences that transform you and paying it forward and sharing the message. So tell us a little bit about your world as a pastor for many decades. How did you get into the ministry initially? And what was your experience when you first got in?
Okay, well, it's complicated.
Everything, right?
Yeah, I kind of tripped into the ministry. My intention was to become a New Testament scholar. I was deep into original biblical languages like Greek and Hebrew, Aramaic, studying theological French, theological German. I'd started my PhD in New Testament studies and so on and so forth, but we got pregnant, and we were given an offer that we kind of couldn't refuse at the time, and that was to become a student minister. Then from there, I ended up getting ordained. And in the Presbyterian Church in Canada. And then, long story short, I served there for a while. Then I switched to a different denomination and finished out my days in the ministry there. I served for about 3 decades as a professional pastor, but I left the ministry in 2010. So I'm married, 3 grown kids, I serve the church in many different ways, in many different places and denominations, but I finally left the ministry in 2010, just because of things going on, and I ended up, again, another long story short, I decided to see if I could make my blog, Naked Pastor, which I'd been doing for about 5 years, a full-time gig, and eventually it worked out. So that's what I do all the time.
Wow. So you had about 5 years of overlap between when you started your blog and when you actually left the ministry. Officially.
I chose the name Naked Pastor because I was a pastor, but I wanted to, that was at the height of the blogging world.
Yeah.
A lot of pastors were blogging, and I thought, well, I want mine to be unique. I want it to be I wanted it to be real. Raw and authentic. I wanted to pull back the curtain for people to see what really goes on in the church, in the ministry, behind the scenes. And that's why I called it Naked Pastor. It's just me being open and vulnerable and honest. And when I left the ministry, though, 5 years later, I really struggled with whether or not to keep that name. But by that time, Naked Pastor become kind of world renowned because of my cartoons. And so on. And I decided, because a lot of people try to convince me, you know what, you might not be in a local church, but you certainly are like a pastor online, at least. And so I decided to keep the name Naked Pastor. And it's I'm having fun with it, and stirring things up.
I love that. I
And
love that about your
yeah,
cartoons. And for anyone who's listening who hasn't gone to Naked Pastor on Instagram, go immediately and brace yourself with a laughter. You may cry. You may see all of the ways that the church has become something that the church was never meant to be.
mm,
And that's one of the main messages I get out of what you're doing. And I love that. I think humor disarms people.
yeah,
It helps us see the insanity of
yeah,
what is maybe uh, the off the beaten path way that Christianity has fallen into a lot of very toxic political ideology, a
mhm,
lot of hate, a lot of division,
mhm,
and to try to throw theology at theology, doesn't really necessarily work. I was raised in this kind of Christianity, the really fundamental Christianity, going to church 3 times a week as a kid.
is that
Sunday
all?
morning. Yeah, that's all. That's all. It was just Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Um, memorizing the Bible. I could still quote chapter and verse, but I was marching for pro-life at age 10, right before I knew babies, how they were born, but I knew I didn't want to kill babies. I
Mhm,
knew that being gay was not right, that was absolutely against God's plan,
yeah,
and that the earth was created in 10,000 years.
mhm,
It's only been around for 10,000 years. Dinosaurs aren't real, that kind of thing. And be afraid the rapture is going to happen. So if I couldn't find my mom around the house, I thought the rapture happened and I was left,
mm,
which is pretty scary.
yeah.
So for
Oh,
you, when you started this blog and you said you were going to show people behind the scenes what it was like to be in a church, what did you talk about? I have been around churches and behind the scenes is a little scary.
well, that's what I talked about. That's one thing that's April,
I've
no, but
had terrible experiences at church, let me just tell you.
well, I have too. As a pastor and as a member, like like I said, I just endeavor to be honest, because people mistake my critique of the church and Christianity and whatever as hatred and wishing to ban it from the earth. But
Mhm.
that's not true. Like, I value the church. I value healthy communities. But my only beef is, can we please do it in a healthy manner? That's all I'm asking. So when
That's
uh
kind of a big ask, by the
yeah,
way.
it is a big ask, but I would ask the same thing of a married couple,
Mhm.
or a young family. Like, be a family, but please do it in a healthy manner. Like, don't raise damaged, adults. Uh,
Mhm.
don't abuse one another, et cetera, et cetera. Like that. That's all I'm asking. And so I was just very honest about what I experienced behind the scenes, because I I believe honesty is 99% of the cure. Is
Mhm.
It's like diagnosis. It's like a
Mm,
diagnosis. That's
mm,
half the battle, is figuring out what's wrong, so that you can do the prognosis and figure out how to fix it. So I that's what I try to do, is I try to diagnose what I think is happening that's not healthy, and then sometimes I provide a prognosis, what I think we should do moving forward, although
mhm.
a lot of people aren't open to that. So for example, for me,
Mhm.
I think a big step forward for the church would be to become completely affirming. And
Mhm.
uh, of course, a lot of the church, that's exactly where it digs in its heels, unfortunately.
Mm. I'll
Mhm,
tell you, actually, I'll give you a little bit of a reveal. So during COVID, before I started O'Leary Publishing, which was like at the end of 2018, we were working on our first couple of books. I'd
mhm,
already done some books myself, for my own business. I was a life coach prior. And
mhm,
so we were managing a local church's social media blog. The pastor at the time was video recording, just with like a webcam, not a webcam, like a camcorder. So I
mhm,
taught him how to upload the video to Google Drive. So I wasn't like attending the church, they were just a client. So then when COVID came, I got asked to come in to help with live stream. So then one of the members paid to get like this big live stream thing installed, and then I got trained on it. So this was like, I haven't been in church. I didn't raise my kids in church. My kids are between 16 and 21, but now I'm going to church every Sunday for like probably over a year, because I got sucked into running this live stream because I got trained on it.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm sitting behind in this little live stream booth, listening to the pastor give a sermon. And I remember the thought coming to me where Peter says, help me in my unbelief.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking to myself, help me in my unbelief. I just think I need to believe this here, but I didn't believe what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And then my oldest daughter came out a few years back. And I remember point blank asking the pastor, what if my daughter and her girlfriend wanted to get married? Would you be able to marry them? And he said, unfortunately, we don't, it's not my authority to do it.
Right.
Something like that. And
Right.
I knew at that moment, I'm like, I can't, even as a client, even though I'm here doing a job, being paid for a job,
Mm-hmm.
I can't be around people who can't support
Mm-hmm.
love.
Mm-hmm.
In whatever form it takes. So I did, I left. And there were some other crazy toxic things going on behind the scenes that were just, you're like, people are worse in a church sometimes than in the regular business world.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you that hurdle to becoming affirming, I just don't understand what the big challenge is, although it's people's interpretation of the scripture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so where do you say that they've misinterpreted, where people that are so stuck in that mindset would be able to break free and see that their legality around that is wrong?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, as things progress, and I do feel that there's progress, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it or look like it, especially in certain regions or states or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I believe conservatism is a reaction to progress. So let's
Interesting.
imagine progress like the gas pedal, and conservatism is the brake.
Mm-hmm.
The harder we press on the gas pedal, the harder they brake. And so that's why I think we're seeing this sort of a reactionary, incendiary reaction to progress around the world. What we're seeing as things progress, and maybe like Canada, for example, pretty much conversion therapy is now illegal, and other countries the same, and same-sex marriages are being allowed, and recognition of trans people, and etc. You're going to see more and more reactionary responses to that. That's what I think is happening. So it's not necessarily even related to scripture, in my opinion. Everybody interprets scripture the way they want to, so it doesn't you can argue night and day over what a meaning of a verse is. It doesn't matter. It's how the person's going to interpret it or believe it. So and that's why I think we're seeing this sort of reactionary response, and sort of preying on people's fears and suspicions and biases and prejudices.
Yeah.
Fortunate.
It's it's interesting. And this is where I'm curious to go in your transformation of your life and how it happened. But
Right.
the way I look back now and see the type of Christianity I was raised with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Carol Dweck. Have you heard of that book, Mindset? Her book. It's not new. It's a very interesting, the concept that stuck with me, the executive summaries, there's people who are fixed mindset people and people who are growth mindset. And so the fixed mindset is the way I was raised with, Jesus is the only way. This is the prayer you say. This is how you get into heaven. This is book, Noah actually built the ark with the nail and the hammer, and everything was, so I'm coming to any conversation without any ears to listen, because why would I listen? I already have all the answers.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
that's the fear is if I open up and listen and think that maybe you have something to share, it's like dismantling the ego or something. I don't know. But so
Mhm.
it's almost like it feels to me almost sometimes impossible to talk to somebody who's stuck in that.
Well, even Jesus said, for those who have ears to hear, let them hear. It's almost like the people come ready to hear or ready to not hear. It's, and is what's that famous saying, when the student is ready, the
Yeah.
master appears.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. Like, and I know that. I know that from my own experience and from my experience online and so on. I don't ever argue with people or get into a debate about, LGBTQ rights or equality or affirmation, all that kind of thing, because it's a waste of time and energy. And so what I do is provide safe spaces, or try to create safe spaces for marginalized people. And that's what I most enjoy and what works,
And you've done it so beautifully, so well. And so when you were writing your blog and you
Mhm,
were still in the ministry,
mhm.
were you as open as you are now, or was it a process for you where you started to have like light bulb moments and you started to see these things are sort of out of alignment with where I'm growing? What was your process of
Well,
opening?
yeah, I was open from the beginning, but you see, that was back in the, embryonic stage where I was flying under the radar. Like hardly anybody was reading my blog, and not even my own congregation. They were like, why would we want to read your blog? We have to listen to you every week already, So it's like
Yeah.
I was under the radar. But then when I started drawing my cartoons, and then my ideas were getting more and more out there, and my cartoons were getting more and more out there, that's when I started to get into trouble. And I realized, okay, there's a cost to being honest and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that,
Mm-hmm.
especially our LGBTQ family and friends. They know
Mm-hmm.
when you are your authentic self, and when you want to be free to express that, there is a cost. And
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm married with kids, to a woman, etc., I know there's a cost to being authentic and being free to express myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so in 2009, the warning signs started to appear, and sure enough, 2010, I left the ministry,
Mm-hmm.
because I had a choice to make: either conform or go free. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
I chose go free. And and still there's a cost. I know there's a cost.
Mm-hmm.
I'll I'll post a cartoon knowing I'm going to lose followers, knowing it's going to affect the sale of my art, and so
Mm-hmm.
on and so forth. I'm being kind of crass here, but I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's true. I know that there's a risk every time I express my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'd rather be free, than trying to please everybody. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What were some of the costs that you would say you didn't expect that came because of your decision to be authentic and honest?
Uh, how quickly people will elevate theology over relationship,
Mm,
including family and friends.
mm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Where,
Yeah.
you know, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. Even if you are my whatever, friend
Yeah.
or brother or whatever. And that, because for me, community, fellowship, unity, uh, togetherness,
Mm-hmm.
connectivity is the fullest expression of love.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that kind of ideology and behavior
Mm-hmm.
is heartbreaking,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you experience it firsthand. I mean, I see
Mm-hmm.
it all the time, every day, in the lives of others. Every
Mm-hmm.
day I hear from people who've been rejected and cast out, uh,
Mm-hmm.
expelled, excommunicated, marginalized, and forgotten. And it's heartbreaking. but I've experienced that too myself in many ways, from certain family and friends and churches and, groups, whatever. But that's the cost of being free to be and express your most authentic self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you say that, it reminds me of the prophet is never welcome in their hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience in some things, when I've had some changes, bigger changes, the people that are closest to you are least likely at times to embrace you in this new chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost becomes this lonely vacuum for a little while. At least that's been my experience, and then the new you, whatever version that is, attracts different people who now are more like you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like mourning what was, that happened to me when I quit drinking. All the people I hung out with that I thought were great friends, you'd think they'd be excited that you made some good life change, and it just doesn't really work out that way. But I've attracted a lot of new, great, authentic people that also don't drink, who would have never wanted to hang out with me before. So, hey, So for you, as you were doing your cartoons and your blog, how did you make the bridge into publishing? What was that journey like for you?
Well, if any of your listeners are writers, I have some great advice.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my books are actually compilations of blog posts.
Mm-hmm.
So, which, like, I actually had somebody say to me, I've had a few people say this to me, well, you didn't really write a book, you just put together blog posts. I'm like, well, excuse me, I wrote the blog posts.
Yeah.
I wrote them every day.
Uh-huh.
And that's how authors work.
Yeah. Right.
And so basically that's what I recommend to writers, is just write every day. I started cartooning in 2006. I just thought I'd give it a shot, see if it would work. Because I was an artist already and I really love a good cartoon. And I thought, why don't I try cartooning, see what happens? And I challenged myself to draw a cartoon every day until I ran out of ideas. I thought I would last a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But here I am 18 years later, still drawing cartoons every day. And that gives me the arsenal to collect some of my best of cartoons, which you just held up the book a moment ago, Flip It Like This, which is a compilation of my best of cartoons over the years. And I had to distill that down from 4,500 cartoons to about 130 cartoons. So that was hard work. But
oh yeah, there's so many good. I mean, every one is a good one. I mean, and here I'm like, how did you decide what to not put?
Yeah, exactly. It was a challenge, but I had an editor helping me out.
Yeah.
So that's how I've written other books too that aren't just pictures. And they're from, like, for example, I wrote a book called Without a Vision, My People Prosper, and that's basically about the danger of visionary thinking in the church and how it can control community. But that was just a collection of a bunch of blog posts, heavily edited and manipulated, but that's how I came up with that book. Questions are the answer, even though it's like a memoir. That was also, I talk a lot about questioning. A lot of my cartoons are about questionings and the validity of it, the necessity of it. And that's how I came up with that book. So it's, to the writers out there, just write, even if it's a paragraph every day, and you'll be surprised. It won't be long, you'll have a book.
That is true. That is true. And I just gave a talk last night to a local ladies networking group about 7 simple steps to writing a book.
Yeah.
And one of the things is, you don't wait till you're inspired. It's like working out and saying, I'm going to wait until I really feel like I want to go on a run. It's like, it's never going to happen. You have to just put your gym shoes on, go out the door, set your timer, set your watch to go off, and just make it a habit.
Yeah.
So when you were about to do, your first book, because a lot of our authors are confused at times about traditional publishing and independent publishing versus just do it all yourself. Were you working with an agent? Did you write a book proposal? Did you have a publisher pitch you about an idea? How did that work for you for your very first book?
So I have 10 books out at this time, and two of them are published with a publisher, and the rest are self-published. And I'm working on another book now. Actually, it's a children's book, and it's the scariest project I've ever taken on. But they all approached me. But that's after I've been, I had about 5 or 6 books out already.
Right.
My own, and I have quite a following on Instagram, for example. That always helps. So, but my first book was just me self-publishing. And so what I tell people now who are interested in writing a book or discouraged, they're writing a book and very discouraged. I'm like, and they're kind of wishing, I wish I have a publisher. I want to clarify something. In both cases, whether you're self-publishing or getting your book published by an imprint, these days, most publishers, if not all, depend on you for the marketing. So having a following and so on is really important, and you'll have to work just as hard to market a published book as you would a self-published book. That's been my experience. And so basically a few things are the same. Is you have to write your book, you try to meet a deadline, you work on your design, you run it through an editor. Even if you're self-publishing, find an editor, and then you publish your book, and then you start marketing your book and hopefully see some income trickle in. The difference with a publisher, though, is you ought to get an advance, and that's nice. And then, if your book does well, you might see royalties down the road. But that, again, that kind of looks like self-publishing when you're getting royalties down the road. But that advance is one difference that a publisher provides that self-publishing doesn't.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing, and I love that you said that marketing is up to you. I tell a funny story that when I was writing my very first book back in 2012, I didn't know anything about publishing. And at the time, I thought my book would be perfect for Hay House. Are you familiar with Hay House?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to a writer's workshop they had up in Tampa that was put on by Reed Tracy, their CEO, and Wayne Dyer was there, and Cheryl Richardson, who was one of their most popular female authors at the time. And I had my manuscript in my bag, and I thought I was going to hand it off to them. And the whole thing at the end of this whole writer's workshop, it came down to build your platform. Like you said, it's a traditional publisher is interested in how are you going to sell your book? Like you said, the marketing. And if you only have 50 followers on Instagram, they're like, there's no way this guy's going to be able to sell a book, right? So where authors spend their time marketing, or how they can attract a traditional publisher versus independent publishing, we sort of fall in the middle. We help people who don't necessarily have the skills or want to do the whole project themselves. We help them do that. But we don't work with literary agents, and we don't acquire, large Instagram. We do have actually a pretty significant Instagram influencer right now that we're publishing in early August. But that's because she wants the independence of being able to monetize her own audience, which she's worked very hard to build. So, and I've no doubt she will, but it's just publishing is a very interesting journey. And I love that you've done both. You've done self and you've done some traditional. Do you prefer one over the other? How would you say your experience was? And you said you're working on a children's book. Are you doing that independently, or are you doing that with a publisher?
A children's book publisher reached out to me, and I'm very honored, because Naked Pastor is kind of an edgy presence.
Mm-hmm.
but funny and affirming and loving and gentle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think they saw that and want that in a book. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be about a rainbow sheep. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I love your
But
rainbow sheep.
yeah, I do too. A lot of people do. So that's why they approached me and asked if I could do a rainbow sheep children's picture book. So I'm not only the writer, but I'm the illustrator. So that's
That's awesome. Do you have a title
I,
yet? Are you
hmm?
allowed to say? Do you have a title yet? Are you allowed to say?
I don't have a title yet, but I am the story's coming together.
Okay.
We're gonna have to wait for that though.
Okay. I can't wait. That
But
sounds
the sheep
amazing.
will be rainbow. I'm only kidding.
I think that's amazing. And I love it. I was at an appointment this morning. We are talking about the podcast, and I showed this gal who I was in an appointment with
Mhm.
one of your cartoons where Jesus has the rainbow sheep over his shoulder.
Right, right.
And then there's the whole grouping of white sheep.
Yeah.
I was explaining to her, because this gal was not raised with the Bible. I said, "Do you know the story about Jesus leaving the
Yeah.
99 to go fight?" She's like, "No, I've never heard of that." I
Wow.
said, she goes, "I
That-
don't know a lot about the Bible." I said, "Well, basically, you get the point that Jesus is about, loving all." And the sheep were like, "No, we kicked him out." I'm like, isn't that just so profound?
You know, I just heard yesterday that Cormac McCarthy died. Do you know who that is?
I don't.
He wrote No Country for Old Men
Oh,
and
yeah. I
all the
saw
pretty
that movie, actually.
yeah, The
Yes.
Road. Um,
Uh-huh.
and he is
Actually, I did read that book, No Country for Old Men, now that you say that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Blood Meridian. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's probably one of the top American authors of all time. Like he'll go down in history for sure. Uh, and I was really disappointed to hear that because I just read his first installment of a trilogy. So I don't know
Mm.
where that's going to go.
Mm.
Anyway, he uh, he was a writer for like over 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
He published several books, I think something like 5 to 7 books. And they didn't hardly make a splash at all. He might have sold 3,000 to 5,000 books each, which, that's a feat in itself. It's hard to sell 5,000 books, but
Mm-hmm.
for Cormac McCarthy, he only sold that many books so he was a struggling author for almost 30 years.
Mm.
And No Country for Old Men, I think it was, or no, maybe it was All the Pretty Horses, came out, and that put him on the map. And then everybody went back into his archives, and
Yeah.
they all got famous as well. And then he's became one of America's greatest authors. So that to me is, just goes to show you can be one of the greatest artists or creators out there, and you might just have to slog away for a long, long time before your book gets seen or your art gets seen or whatever, right? So
That is so true. And
yeah,
how many artists do we know that died penniless? Like
yeah,
Vincent van Gogh, I believe, did.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
if
just got
only he would have known how amazing and
yeah.
valuable his work really was during his lifetime.
The thing is, like I just ordered, in fact, I just got it in the mail, his letters, Vincent van Gogh's letters.
Mhm.
And there he's talking with his brother Theo, who was a big supporter of his, and just saying, I know these paintings are good, and one day they're going to be worth something,
Mhm.
so he knew it, and that's why
Mhm.
he kept at it, and
Mhm.
it's like me, like I feel like I'm doing, I don't want to sound egomaniacal or anything like that, but I feel like I'm doing some good work in the world,
You're doing very
and
great work.
and I believe it, and I think some of my cartoons are good, and some of my paintings are good, and I'm making a difference in people's lives. And I'm not rich by any means. I'm a struggling artist from year to
Mhm.
year, but I'm having fun doing what I do. And
Mhm.
one of the greatest payoffs, one of the greatest rewards isn't money, but seeing that I'm encouraging people.
And, I think that the cool thing about art or with writing books, anything can happen
Yeah.
because there could be, someone who
Hmm.
leaves the church that's a big name and discovers your work and tweets it out or takes a picture of themselves on Instagram. And like you said, it's just the same way where that's how Colleen Hoover, what happened to her? Have you heard of her? She's a newer, okay. So I have three daughters. My youngest is 16 and they're all on TikTok. And
Okay.
so, the whole thing book talk, right?
Yeah.
And so some teen girls started book talking and showing her cover of a couple different books. And then it caught on like wildfire. And so she went from, self-published, largely unknown, with some successes to now, I think, gosh, a month ago or so, I saw on the New York Times bestseller list, she had the top 8 of 20 spots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. It's right. I mean, it's what
What's her name again?
Colleen Hoover.
Colleen Hoover.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's just the magic of just keep writing, just keep promoting and sharing. And it could be a 14-year-old girl on TikTok who shares your book with her 4 other 14-year-old girls. And, you just never know the magic and what can happen. So
Wow.
I'll tell you right before we end here, I had this idea
Okay.
because one of the things that scared me as a kid was the rapture. And it
Yeah.
was always I love one of your cartoons. It's the reverse rapture. It shows the clothes getting sucked up to the sky and the people are standing there naked, like what's happening. I just thought it's so funny to me. But
I
my
have another
mom,
one too. Have you seen my Left Behind one?
yes, with the arrow on the left behind, I
Yeah.
love. Yes. So fortunately, my mom doesn't listen to this podcast, or I wouldn't say this, but she doesn't even know what a podcast is. So I was at her house recently and she still is stuck sort of in this thread. And
Yeah.
she listens to some people like, I don't know if you know Dr. David Jeremiah is. She gets his stuff. And so it was on her kitchen table and it was open. It's a monthly glossy magazine from the,
Yeah. From the ministry.
from the ministry. I had to go get my barf bag. I'm sorry. But it was the 10 signs the rapture is imminent. And it's that even reading it sort of just gives me anxiety. But of course they do the alliteration, where every single one is like the same letter, and it's the same. So I'm like, this guy's recycling what I heard in the 80s when I was in church and I was afraid of. So
Yeah.
I think there needs to be 10 signs the rapture's not happening.
Okay. I'll write that down.
Like, help me dispel my fear and laugh at all that, because it's not. I remember though, the moment I was driving in my car and I had this thought, what if Jesus isn't the only way? And I remember feeling like, I don't want, I'm sorry, God, I didn't mean to think that. I hope that my salvation isn't, over, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of anxiety and fear producing, like you said, the brake pedal. And I thought that was a great way to put it.
Mm.
It's the fear of moving ahead. So
Mhm.
they're trying to put the brakes on. So thank you for sharing that.
It's scary
So
when we're progressing or, you know, um, growth means just like a child when they grow into adolescence and then teen years and young adulthood and then adulthood and everything, your mind changes. You have to change the way you think.
mhm,
And it's the same with our spirituality. We can't
mhm,
we can't stay the way we thought when we were first introduced to the spiritual world. We
mhm,
need to change our thinking. We need to change our theology, our
mhm.
ideas. And that's a scary process, especially when all of religion um, fearfully makes us think that we can't change what we've been taught. So
Mhm.
it is a really
It's because there's eternal consequences if you
yeah,
change
that's
your
right.
thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to get up to the pearly gates and then say, well, you had it right for the first part of your life, but sorry.
Yeah. One of
You,
my cartoons is Peter is standing at the pearly gates and there's a man standing in front of him and Peter says, "It says here you're an atheist." And the guy says, was. I don't know if he changed his mind in time
Oh,
or not, so we'll see.
oh my gosh, that's funny. I love it. It's such a, what do they say, tangled web we weave or something like that.
Yeah.
All of this stuff. And I feel like as a parent, and you said you have kids, adult
Mhm.
children now,
Mhm.
um, because my husband, I mentioned, was Catholic and I was Protestant, and we really didn't agree on where to raise them. And
Mhm.
so we didn't do anything. And now I look back at that was the biggest blessing. I feel like I gave them the gift of no spiritual chains.
Yeah,
Um,
that's that's great, but here's the thing. Our kids were raised in the church. They're all PKs, preachers' kids,
mm,
pastors'
hmm
kids. And there's missionary kids, and there's all kids, atheists who were raised in atheist homes who decide to become believers. And there's like we all figure it out. And so that's what
hmm
I'm about. I'm trying to say, hey, listen, you have the right to be spiritually independent. Take the wheel of your life now. And
hmm
go where you want to go. Be who you
hmm
want to be. Make
hmm
your own decisions, be autonomous, be self-determining. That's your right and your responsibility and your reward for
hmm
being a human being and for being an adult. You get to decide how to be spiritual. And so that's what I try to hammer home.
I love it. And I think also it seems to me that what you hammer home is take the driver's seat, but don't hurt other people in the process. Because spirituality is not about you're better than someone else, or someone else has to change, or I need to get them to change, or
Mhm.
any of that. That's
Exactly.
missing the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Loving all. And wouldn't that be the easiest way to be? Love is the highest energy vibrational level, apparently, according to energy testing. So why would we not focus on that? I don't know.
I know
Seems simple, right?
it's simple, but there's people who can't understand what love is. Love is like well, even Jesus said, justice falls like rain on everyone, and like sun, it falls on everyone. And I don't know if they knew about gravity back then, but gravity pulls in everyone. It's indiscriminate. Love is
hmm
indiscriminate.
hmm
And because it includes everyone, and it's the people who try to divide and separate and center themselves and exclude others who are actually excluding themselves because they're not participating in what I feel is a universal energy or process or reality, actually. And that is that love is what binds us all together. That's the
mm
clue. And it's not agreement or compatibility or anything like that. It's love. And when you see, if people understood that about love, then that would take away all the, I think, the toxicity of ideology and division and war and greed and all those things, right? And it would make the world a better place. I really do think that.
hmm
Call me naive.
mm No, I think I'll vote for you. Can you run for president?
Canadian, so
What was that?
I'm Canadian.
Oh my goodness. I knew I heard the accent. I was thinking maybe Minnesotan.
No, I'm
Still
Canadian.
you got the O. Yeah. So you're in summer. Are you in summer now, or is it still
Yes,
cool for
we're in
you?
summer. No, it's beautiful right now.
Okay.
For about a week. No, I'm only kidding. We have,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
a we have a beautiful we're on the river.
Oh yeah. Look at that. And nice green grass, the soft green grass.
Yeah.
So nice. Beautiful. I don't know why I didn't know you were in Canada. I guess I didn't look you up on the map. But well, I
A lot of
appreciate you
people
so
assume I'm
much.
American. Yeah.
What
Well,
was
my
that?
wife is American, and
Oh, okay.
we met in Springfield, Missouri at a Pentecostal Bible college. And although she's Canadian now, dual actually. And so all our kids are dual because they have a Canadian father and an American mother. So we have two boys who live in the States right now, and our daughter lives near here.
Gosh, you dropped the Pentecostal bomb at the end of the interview. I migrated into the Pentecostal church in college, and I was going to be a missionary, and I
Which
did.
which
Huh?
which college?
Well, I was going to be a missionary, and I had dropped out of regular college. I'd met a guy, and who's not my husband. My husband now is not that person. And I was going to go to the Jerry Savelle Bible School. Do you know what Jerry Savelle is? He is like I don't even know if he's still around. I haven't looked him up in 20 years
Hmm.
or more. In the same vein as like a Kenneth Copeland.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know all about.
Or Oral Roberts.
Yeah, been there, done that. Got the
Oh
T-shirt,
yeah. Oh, you got more than the t-shirt. Yeah.
and
You got the slain in the I've been slain in the spirit t-shirt.
I've got so many stories. I just have so many stories. Yeah. Oh, the Pentecostal church, that's where Lisa and I met. She came from a Pentecostal church down in Alabama. Holiness. Crazy, I'm talking.
Wow.
Then I was from Pentecostal Church Canada, and I went to Bible College in Central Bible College, Springfield, Missouri, and that's where she went. That's where we met, and yeah, uphill from there.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, a
Wow.
lot of Pentecostal, then Presbyterian, and then Vineyard. I don't know if you've heard of Vineyard.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's where I finished.
Wow. Yeah, that's I mean, to go from Pentecostal to Presbyterian is a pretty big step.
Yeah, but see, like I said, I was baptized Anglican, and then we moved around a lot. So we weren't devoted to any one denomination. We float around. So I never felt devoted to any one denomination or any loyalty to any one denomination. And so I went to where I felt most comfortable and where we were happiest. So, it was Pentecostal, maybe Baptist, then it was Presbyterian, and then Independent, then Vineyard, so yeah.
Do you go anywhere now?
No, I go to Bedside Tabernacle.
Okay. I've
And
seen some of your cartoons. That's perfect. Yeah.
Pastor Pillow, and we sing Bringing in the Sheets.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's good. Yeah. Well, I've made friends with a few people at the Unitarian Universalist Church, which I
Oh,
do
I've been there
like.
too.
And
Been there.
I do find that interesting. It's different because it's more socially justice oriented, and
Yeah.
they're not at all dogmatic about anything. A lot of atheists there actually,
Yep.
and agnostics and whatever. It's
We
not
did.
really their main purpose. It's just like, yeah, freedom, respect, love for all. I like that. I can get behind that.
Yeah. There was a Universalist church here, and we went there for a while, and then it ended up closing. But yeah, we enjoyed it there and met some cool people.
Yeah.
Sunday mornings now, I'm usually drawing my Sexy Sunday cartoon.
I've seen them, which I think is so great. I love it.
It's the
You know which
pure-
one I love is the one, and I think you posted it recently, and the two girls are in bed
Yeah.
and they say, "Should we go to church this morning? Just pretend we're friends again," or something.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so good.
I see what I'm doing there is I'm gonna post one every Sunday for like a couple of years, and then on
Mhm.
a book of Sexy Sunday cartoons. So
I love that.
yeah.
So good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we went way over a half an hour, but this has been so interesting. And you just have such a gift. I think that the way that you're delivering the message of love is beautiful. I think that the way that you are disarming people and allowing them to think differently about their faith through
Mhm.
cartoons is
Mhm.
just a real gift. And it is a ministry.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that we connected. I'll continuing to follow you and share your posts with my friends and our community here at I'm Booked.
Yeah.
And what would be the best way for people to follow you outside of Instagram for sure? And I'll put that in the show notes at Naked Pastor. But what
Yeah.
else would you say?
I'm Naked Pastor everywhere online.
Okay.
Make sure you Google Naked Pastor as one word. If you Google two words, you will see naked pastors. So
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so just letting you know. But nakedpastor.com is my base camp. And then from there,
Okay.
find Naked Pastor all over the internet, including YouTube. So, and I'm really good. If you reach out to me for any reason, either through a direct message or an email or whatever, I'm really good at responding.
I can attest to that. He is good at responding. I appreciate you responding to the request to be on the podcast, and
Well,
thank you
it's
so
great
much
that
for your time.
I feel like we have tons to talk about. So it's good.
Yeah, I would say there's a whole arena of topics that could be subjects for another podcast for sure. But I will keep following you and keep sharing what you're doing. And thank you for your time today to be on this. And thank you for all the work you're doing to make us a more unified world, because isn't that the point?
Yes,
And
it
I'll
is.
look for those signs the rapture's not happening.
Yeah.
Cartoons at some point in the future. So I
Yeah.
could stop having any anxiety that, maybe someday the horn's blowing and I'm not hearing it or something.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Have
Take
a good
care.
Bye.
So this has been another episode of the iBook podcast. I'm April O'Leary signing off. Be sure to hop on over to o'learypublishing.com to start your author adventure and see what writing a book could do for you in your profession, in your career, and what doors it might open. We thank our guests for being a part of the show today, and be sure to subscribe to podcasts here on YouTube. We look forward to serving you and helping you get your book out into the world.